Awesome to see. And it looks like we're going into Keiras against Blask next, starting on Broken Crown, and another Vanguard versus Infernal is what it's looking like. I'm enjoying it, Winter. Give me more. Give me more of these.
Yeah, this is another top 100 match, and I'm excited to see even a little closer than the last one going into game one.
All right, well, here we are. Here we are loaded in. Blue Infernal player in the bottom left. That is Keiras. And it looks like I may have been a little off. Okay, so they're both playing Infernal for this one.
We were reading the
We've
message
got
instead of.
Blask. Yes, exactly. We've got Blask as the red Infernal in the top right.
Here we go. Cutting through the trees on one side, we have the counterplay from Blask, who's going to be heading over to the left side camp, and then Keiras, who's cutting through the trees to head towards the left side camp himself. So, I give it about a 50-50 on this game making it past the 5-minute mark. As actually, so far in Infernal versus Infernal, it's kind of evened out. I feel like players have started to figure out how to stabilize, though clearly the player who wins the first fight gets a big advantage, at least in the early game.
Yeah, the impact of the camps. Like I feel like for Vanguard, it's a little easier to ignore, especially if you're against Infernal or if you're against any kind of build where you want to be a little more defensive than aggressive. But for the Infernals, those camps just play such a crucial role in getting your early fighting force together and being able to either deny the objectives or turn that the early imps or the early fiends rather into something that can generate a little more value for you. And we have the turret going up here by that speed camp. Talk to me, Winter. What's going on?
Well, Age of Empires players are big fans of tower rushes, or so I've heard. Well, here we are. This is... I honestly, I don't know how this works out. But with the Shroudstone and the fact he was able to tag with the Infest, it looks like Keiras going to be off to a decent start here. I don't think Keiras knows... Or Blask doesn't know anything about that Shroudstone about to finish, which could be disaster. Yep. And it looks like the speed camp just goes to Keiras at the end of the day. And that is a distinct advantage. He's going to get all the extra fiends. He's already done a lot of damage to the first gaunt. And Blask kind of gambit to counter this speed camp is now in jeopardy.
Yeah, we talked about the pain of trying to get the heal. Of course, they have the white health that regenerates on the Shroud, but there's the dive onto that Gaunt. You were mentioning it. He was exposed, vulnerable. Tries to dive the second one, actually. Brute ends up splitting for it after he gets the shot with his own Gaunt, stepping back up the cliff now and able to get both Brutes splitting there for Blask. So giving up his ability to take that head-to-head fight. And as you said, you talk about the snowball impact. Now he gets the vision camp, gets another fiend or two out, and just a little fiend on fiend action, but he's got that Shroud over there helping him to secure that objective very early on.
Important point, and this is from my understanding. If you split the Brute before it dies outright with Infest, you keep your fiends. Whereas if it dies just from auto attacks, it turns into their fiend. So that is a pinpoint and very important part of micro in the early game, where instead of them getting a feed and you getting nothing, you getting 2 feeds seems like a pretty huge difference. And that's kind of what kept Blask going so far and keeps him with a relatively comparable amount of units out on the field.
Great point to bring up. Coming in back over the resource camps, getting a little trade over here. I guess the only real difference then is that Blask at the very least has it's got a couple of Gaunts extra mixed over here. It goes up with the split. We've got the Fiends fighting 2 Brutes in the back for Keiras. Not as much on the Gaunt side, so he's looking to protect that one in the back. Tries to dive it with his Fiends, but he's not going to be able to get it. And we've just got a Brute chasing a few of these Gaunts downhill. Goes for the snipe on the other one. Not able to get it that time either. Going for the heal.
Flowers. Gets the Fiend split at the last second. At the end of the day, well, it's still unclear, but it looks like it's tilting towards Keiras. But wait, there's more. Another Brute and a Gaunt, and they're still going at it. The Gaunts have no way of avoiding the Infest that they're able to deal out to everyone. And because those glaives kind of bounce throughout the army, it's almost guaranteed that any unit nearby is going to end up infested. So just like that, well, it's Blask who has the advantage. But there is at least a Shroud Stone, which isn't much, but it's definitely something to even the odds. Oh, well, he didn't have a shrine this whole time.
was enough to deter him a little bit, and yeah, exactly. Starting his own expansion. When you see that your opponent's is done after a fight like that, definitely be mildly demoralizing. But it's not like he doesn't have any map control himself, right? And a couple of good jobs trading out, and we'll just have to see how this one progresses from here. But you were talking about the potential for this one to be really short with that crazy aggression, and from the very start, as soon as that Shroud Stone went up on that left side camp, that the action kicked off, and I guess this is really the first lull that we've had.
Yeah, as Keiras, actually, the reason he ended up losing the fight is he wasn't reinforcing because he invested in a shrine. And it's paid off so far, but some of his production is vulnerable. It looks like he has enough gaunts to hold the line. He's got to be careful here, as Blask is clearly aware that he's behind on the expansion, which means he's likely behind on economy. But it's even though you can literally see the worker count, you won't necessarily have all of your imps on each base. Like, you could be transferring them down just in case you need them, or in order to, since you can literally look at the number, you can maybe fool your opponent into thinking you have a lot more than you do, which is kind of a tactic in Zerg versus Zerg in StarCraft 2. You pull half your drones down to make it look like you're doing an economic play, but then come out with a whole bunch of units. Wouldn't be surprised to see some of that here.
Big brain plays. Speaking of, Doombringer coming out, so we'll see some drops on either side here, as that's fun when two Doombringers pass in the night. Definitely get a little bit crazy.
Doombringer, the direct path for Blask, as opposed to Keiras, who's trying to sneak his way around, which this could get. I've never seen a full-on base trade where it came down to eliminating the buildings, but well, here we are.
There it goes. So Doombringer is going to unload at at worst. He stays there and the production is there. At best, he's able to get a couple of these imps to start rolling into the fiends. And now on the other side, Keiras lands in his base. So we talk about the snowball potential of everything turning into fiends. That's on the table for each of them. Shroud Stone's going to get dropped by Blask. I believe that's the energy one you were talking about to try and help defend against this. So maybe getting a little bit of that extra defense that you were discussing, and still having a huge amount inside of Keiras' base. Well, and all of a sudden things look like they're taking a nice turn for Blask, or you disagree?
And I'm not willing to commit to.
I tried to get you there.
And there's the defensive stone, and the infest is helping out a bit, but there just is so much. Yeah.
The unit count. Yeah, the unit count feels like once he had that many fiends, the super stone was just not going to be able to do it. And interesting, very interesting game. Keiras feels like we kind of won on the build order execution at the very start, and then it almost felt like he was trying to be too tactical, taking a little more time to get his Doombringer across, and that just gave Blask that tiny little edge that snowballed into a game 1 victory.
Attack, and then he decided to follow that up with attack, whereas Keiras tried the little tower thing, which I think did pay off, and then he took a shrine earlier, then he took the roundabout path with the Doombringer, which I don't think that was necessary to do because I don't think the vision camp was claimed, though I'm not 100%. Though, doesn't matter very much because getting there is the important part. You're unlikely to sneak anything by at that stage, but it's quite a poker game right now in Infernal versus Infernal, and sometimes your hand comes up a little short there, as Blask just sending it the whole time. I think game 2 will end up on Secluded Grove. I believe that is our guaranteed.
Seems to be the pattern. Seems to be the pattern that we've been following.
So that is when both sides are able to get a lot more fiends off of the speed camps in each corner. 4 speed camps in total. Of course, the base is way further apart, but it doesn't really change the kind of style of the game, but it definitely allows you to get higher up the tech tree, at least, before we see everybody melting each other's faces off with Infest. So hopefully we have a little more variety in game 2. Though, at the same time, like, there's nothing stopping you from just getting one camp and sending it across. I think it was Manon talking about you can, because of the way the camps are laid out on Secluded Grove, there's trees right behind the speed camps. So you can just go through and now you're on your opponent's side. Just like that. Just through the trees. It's a little more roundabout than it is on Broken Crown, but at the same time, I haven't seen anyone utilizing it yet, so prime opportunity.
Especially with how many plays seem to center around getting those fiends off of the camps. It feels like it makes sense if you can go take that speed camp immediately and use that to get everything there faster with your few extra units. There's big potential, but it's definitely you can really see the infernal mirror matchup gets a little bit wonky, I think, with those early trades, because the infest and the bounce just creates it almost, it's like everybody's got grenades strapped to them at that point, where you're like, okay, one bad move and all of this falls apart very, very quickly.
Yeah, the brutes are just splitting themselves open in order to avoid getting
There's a fiend
infested.
inside me. The only way to kill it is to turn into two fiends. There you go.
The math checks out. And the only way to chase down the gaunts, because of course the fiends counter the gaunts, which counter the brutes, and the brutes are the only way to get the fiends. So here we are. And therefore everyone understands. I think everyone's got it from there.
It's
There's nothing else
rock
needs to
paper
be
scissors,
explained.
right? It's right. Somebody once told me it was all very simple, and I just didn't.
It's like rock
understand
paper
it, so.
scissors all around you in a wind tunnel. All right. And
Oh, okay.
that's what it feels like playing Infernal versus Infernal. Like, you don't bring in the rock; they're just there, and
It's like one of those
whoever makes it out.
It's the indoor skydiving setup where you and the other player are just both floating in a random glass tube or whatever with knives. I like it. I'll take it. It has that level of stress inducing just watching it, you know. I get nervous. I'm like, I just don't. It's hard. It feels like it's a little bit hard to tell, but
I think it's also the charge system on the Infernals means you don't have to be building units at a consistent rate. You can sometimes wait like a full minute without really wasting any charges, which a minute is a long time when you're fighting out in the center of the map. So sometimes players will add in like one brute, one gaunt, get an advantage, and then suddenly there's 4 more gaunts out of nowhere. And it's very hard to kind of keep track of all that before you're literally in the fight. So
yeah, I think it feels like the difference in that mechanic scouting wise is that typically you would if it was a Zerg, I guess, to draw this comparison for the 100th time, you would see the amount of larvae that they either have or that they don't have, and you could kind of use that to tell how many units they have or haven't been building. But since it's the
but if
charges
they
on
have
the
the larva
structures,
and they don't have, or they haven't taken the
yeah, exactly. So
yeah,
you can
it's
get
making
into
more
different
sense as time
degrees.
goes on.
Yeah, you can get
And
into
if you get the
different degrees
greater
of the
shrine,
impact.
then you're able to get the shroud stone early. So you got to factor in that secondary defense. And then, of course, if you're able to get a shadow flyer to take down their Doombringer, and then that brings them to the ground. Wait, can a shadow flyer attack a Doombringer on the ground? I don't think so.
I think it counts as a ground unit once it lands, right?
Yeah.
I think the only unit
This
that
has not become relevant yet,
the only unit that seems to occupy both of those spaces is the Weaver, right? The big boy, because I know he can see up cliffs, but I don't know if he can be attacked by anti-air. I haven't really. Nobody builds them. Nobody builds them. Nobody's made them against me, so I don't actually know. But I know that it's supposed to see above high ground, so that's my closest guess.
Yeah, they're just too unwieldy overall. Though
They're
it's a
very
cool,
slow.
cool mechanic. They have percent damage per slap. But the problem is they do have to get close enough to slap things.
They don't.
So,
You don't get much slower than the Weaver. So
they're pretty good against buildings, but buildings don't run away. So there's that. They have that advantage. I'm not sure if we're going into more of this dramatic series as we can continue to break down Infernal versus Infernal, which we can go deeper down this particular rabbit hole.
We can go deep. We can go deeper.
Should we? That's
I
not
don't
really a
know.
question we need to ask.
I
That's not. We
hope
should
you guys
ask whether or not we
hope
should.
you guys have been having fun. We appreciate your patience, of course.
Thanks
Been
for
a lot
tuning in to EGC TV here on Twitch TV, and
That's
where we
right.
already saw some good GGs for absolutely free. Anything? Is it your cup of tea?
I was trying to think of the next word to go to rhyme with, but you're a little quicker with these than me, Winter, today. I'll give you that. You know, my professionalism mode turns on too much when I'm like doing the quote unquote casting thing, and you're still bringing out the banter at the stream speed, and I have to admit I'm impressed, but I can't keep up. Because I'm programmed now to point out that we do have the overlay showing us as we are going to get into game number 2. Blask leading the series 1-0 over Keiras. Can't wait to see what happens in game number 2, Winter. And here we are, loaded in. We're ready to go. Can you believe it? And we're on the map. We're here. It looks like for game 2 on
map?
this one, we've found ourselves in Jagged Maw.
And there are 2 imps headed across the map. So that is off
2.
to a rambunctious start.
So turret for Shroudstone for one objective, and then okay, no, he's just putting it towards the front of the natural. Okay, I was like, he's not going for the middle and doing something else like that.
We still got an imp out near the speed camp. Maybe gonna put a Shroudstone close enough. Keiras not doing any of the sort, just building everything in his base. Not very creative, I will say. Pretty explored straight. Well,
building stuff in your own base. Are you? What is
only
this?
Weak players do that.
2010? Are you kidding me? Oh.
Is he? Oh no! Don't do it.
No way. Is that
Can you kite it? I don't know if they get high ground vision if you attack it with a Shroudstone. They might be. Well, we'll just have to let it play out. But clearly, this is a dramatic gamble.
That is 2 very heavily armed deer and 2 very heavily armed chickens, Winter. I express a mild amount of concern for the Shroudstone rush on the level 3 siege camp, but we are either going to walk away from this game with our minds blown, or well, probably minds blown either way. I feel like sink or swim.
Yeah.
This will
melted or blown. Really, either way, whichever you like.
Exactly.
I've got all night. Okay, well, he's clear. Well, I would say he's clearly tried this before, but it might. Okay, so they do have vision of it, but is it enough to make the difference? Because obviously he's using the leash range to kite them back there. The deers, of course, unleashing their rocket-propelled grenades as they do. Meanwhile, the speed camp taken out by the Shroudstone and Blask, so he's gonna rack up those fiends early. If he can figure this out.
Does he take the vision camp and see this? What happens when he takes the vision camp and he sees this? He's be like, what the hell is going on, man?
You can't get there in time.
You can't. I didn't know you could do this. You could just take the siege camp at the very... Yeah, but doesn't getting it this early... Doesn't getting this early... Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, doesn't it mean he's just going to go all the way around the entire map, too? So...
He's just going to escort. It's an escort mission now. I gotta...
All right.
Protect the catapult. Save the catapult, save the game.
Yeah, and then the escort always they move just barely slower. They move barely faster than you do walking, but barely slower than you do running. It's the best. Oh, there you go. That's how you take the camps, baby.
He had to get his feeds out of the way. Oh, the catapult is very adamant about
what is going to happen? What is going to happen here? This is
going to be terrible damage to both sides, I think. But that's one way to get the infest to come through pretty quick.
Scoops
so
a big
the catapult does not, you cannot control it. It automatically moves forward on the path to your opponent's base. But like you can kind of predict what it's going to do. So, well, well, oh no!
Oh, it's going after the vision camp! Oh, I guess this is the best opportunity that he would have to try and make a play on it here. It's kind of. Oh, he almost gets his own fiend there. Nice juicy shot, center mass of the Gaunts. And this is just gnarly, man. Like this, I love catapults. I've played a lot of Age of Empires. I love fast games. I played a lot of StarCraft, but this specific scenario we are witnessing is something I cannot comprehend. It is truly fascinating. So it's like the slow and painful. It's the slowest possible death. It's gonna take a while for this catapult to still get to his base, but what is he going to do in the interim?
Well, he's taking a shrine. I guess like you could use one fiend to just constantly draw the shots, and I think it can dodge it. Not like that, but he's kind of just letting it close in. Oh, and a Doombringer!
Ooh, so the catapult is almost bait now.
Oh my god!
So he will kill it. He will kill it, but there it is inside of the main. There's you see the fiend snowball off the imps getting chunked by these Gaunts. So just what an absolutely gnarly strategy this game out of Keiras. Is it going to work? Tough questions to find out. He's starting to get through the opposing Gaunts though, so potentially tying things up for game 3 seems to be on the possibility list for Keiras, if Blask was able to hold on to the bases, we knew he had the economy going, but that was just devastating. He had to make so much just to deal with that catapult, and by the time he had anything to do it, boom, Doombringer in the main base.
Well,
I think we did have our minds blown a little bit here.
The Superstone actually gunned down like 3 or 4 of the gaunts, and now he just uses the inject to pop some more out. I think he's going to do another drop. But the Superstone at the natural here 100% saved the day. And it turned some of those gaunts into fiends as they were already infested. And, well, Keiras has expanded, but he has not been super focused on economy. So I think Blask still has more workers overall. And, well, the attack will continue. Just like Blask last game, Keiras is going to keep sending it across. He has a shrine on the way, but that's clearly not the major focus.
Yeah, he's going to keep getting the fiends off of the meat farm anyway. And every time he comes down is what it looks like. So cleans that up. Going for the meat farm. Not going to try and push down the ramp immediately yet, but of course still has the option with the Doombringer to try and retreat. But that Superstone...
He has the stone. Yeah, I think it's off cooldown, but he might not have the energy. You can see the energy on each Shroud Stone, but he's losing the main. And if he doesn't have a shrine, he can't build a shrine, the stone near a shrine, which is a requirement. Oh, yeah, he doesn't have enough energy. You can see it on the Shroud Stone there. And that means he's going to lose his main, which is, believe it or not great economically.
That's a tough situation. Take the base much later than your opponent, but because of the commitment to the early aggression, he's still able to put that into something that eventually gets him a nice economic spot. So he's on 2 bases, is Keiras, and for Blask, it's just such an awkward game. He did the thing that seemed like the obvious move, went out, tried to do a little tower trick, get the speed camp, farm up a few dudes, but the siege guy is at his base immediately. And if I just want to make one compliment to Blask here, it's that he's still alive at all, because this is just such a crazy situation that can only happen in this game too, is something to point out. Not the type of strategical play that you could really get out of many other RTSs using the camp and a drop play like that. So he's done a good job holding on, but the Doombringer is still alive. He's still continuing to bring more pressure onto the economy. And I guess the question becomes, at what point do we see Blask feel like he's able to move out and try to do something?
The Shroud Stone actually dying to the fiends, but he turns around at the last second, doesn't quite kill it. But, well, he's going to go for the siege camp again. And there's this awkward scenario where he's kind of fed him a bunch of gaunts. So now Blask has... It's not good. It's clearly not great. Oh, yeah, that's... But... I'm trying to find a hidden eye. Oh, yeah, this is Siege Camp level 4, which means these are some incredibly dangerous chickens.
Yeah, got a lot of damage output coming from there. Continuing to clean them up, though. And then, of course, you've got to deal with the siege again, so...
Oh, he didn't pick it up?
See,
Every second counts on picking it up. He didn't actually get the catapult. You have to go pick it up after doing the camp. And he didn't do so. I think he just... No, he didn't pick it up yet.
Yeah, he's just loading up the drop while he's getting hit. And there's actually nothing at all in the natural for Keiras. So Blask is just going to yeet his gaunts in, get a ton of fiends to try to spawn in off of the imps. But there's that defensive tower you're talking about, the Shadow Stone coming in. Big value. And Blask, maybe he got some work done, but all of his gaunts are forfeit here. He sends the drop, by the way, to the main and sees that there's nothing there, so...
He never even picked up the catapult. What a power move. Well, probably the most direct usage of the camp so far, so... I think there was some more counterplay, but it's so weird to deal with.
It's tough. Like, logically, it's the slow siege guy in your mind. It's like, okay, you overwhelm it with the cheap, fast guys. But for Infernal, that's your fiends, which you're either getting from the camps infesting, or you're splitting your brutes. And your brutes aren't exactly cheap, and you only have a limited number of charges of those. So how do you approach trying to take that down? Maybe there's a moment to try and recognize that the catapult was left alone as long as it was. But at that point, you could also assume that it's bait and that he wants you to go out and dive it because his army's off to the side. So that's all. That's tough. That's hard. I'm personally not a huge fan of getting hit by those types of rushes, but you can really see how devastating it can be in a game like that.
Yeah, obviously not super fun to get beaten by an AI unit. But at the same time, I think there was some opportunity to try to draw it out because it will target, even if it's a fiend, it will target the nearest unit. Can send a unit out, kind of like dealing with Hellborn, where if they just A move like the catapult does, it'll just target that fiend. And maybe you can use it kind of like a siege tank or a Widowmine in StarCraft to draw the fire into their army. It's it's a lot easier said than done since their units are the same speed as yours and can easily box him out. But I think he handled it well, and that brings us to game number 3.
All right, we are loaded in, and we get. I mean, this little mix up in terms of the map order is something that I like too, because you get the getting the one of the more normal maps for game 3. I think kind of gives us a little bit more interesting potential anyway. I'll say as the imps move out to start this one, and we've got Keiras in the top right as the red infernal, and Blask as the blue one in the bottom left. So we expect to see more Shroudstone used to take the camps here, Winter.
Shroudstone or meat farm, yeah. And Shroudstone seems to be more popular, but you do need to build a meat farm, which is essentially your supply eventually. So some players will use it as part of the way to clear the camps. We'll see. We have that. Well, I'm not sure which one that is, but it's a smaller building. And starting things off. Yeah, both players just honestly, I'm not sure the reasoning for having some of these on the low ground besides just being a little bit faster. Oh, he does go for the meat farm this time.
Just sends it out, and then you just kind of just build it as soon as you can afford it, but anywhere, kind of the vibe.
Yeah,
It's
just gets
definitely
there a little bit faster.
It's definitely an interesting approach because you look at other RTS games and even when you have like map randomization and stuff, like there's some kinds of concepts that you're like, we're always going to try to be putting something this close to X target or whatever. But seeing because being out on the map is such a huge factor in Stormgate, there's not as much attention paid to that because if you're building it out somewhere where it's more exposed, it's also closer to the camps. So if you can outplay your opponent, then a confident player is always going to want to put themselves in a position where they can be the first to contest it and give themselves that opportunity to get the outplay.
Also, kind of a side note is how the Fellhogs are a bit of a liability, as we saw last game in the base. If your meat farm is out on the map, they can't turn them into fiends in your own base and kill your imps with them.
True that. Because I actually don't build any of my meat farms in my own base. That's right. I've never had a hog turned into a fiend kill my own imps before.
Only once. All right, never again. But wow, he found the exact placement for the gaunt here, where the units will just kind of juggle back and forth without ever hitting it. And so far, well, easily able to take it out.
Nicely done. Start to snowball that up like we talk about. Get a few more fiends rolling. That speed camp on the northwest. He's got an eyeball on. Does Blask.
And he's gonna grind his way through it.
So you think when they get through this first set of camps, we'll watch them kind of mirror each other a little bit and then just slam everything they have into each other, most likely, or quick Doombringer again, perhaps?
If anybody can pick off a gaunt or two, and maybe I think you head across the map and you kind of give each other the side eye with the fiends, and maybe if you find an opportunity, but it's relatively rare. And if you just send out the fiends, you're not at risk of them being turned into fiends against you, so it's a relatively low risk situation, especially with that extra speed he had for a moment.
Yeah, getting just a little bit of a chase going, running around.
Wait, there's more.
Tower. He's got his gaunts coming from the left. Yeah, just a little back and forth there, right? Goes for the split on the retreat and just falling back for the time being, but very similar compositions. Not as many brutes for Keiras.
There's no Shroudstone. There's nothing, no real reliable defense. It's going to come down to Micro. The Gaunts bouncing through. He pre-splits, make sure that Fiend doesn't get turned against him. Another set of Gaunts coming through. I'm not sure if he injected the Conclave, but definitely a lot more Gaunts popping out for Keiras here. And the Fiends on both sides are starting to grind through. The Gaunt count is lowering dramatically, and the Fiends are increasing proportionately. But it looks like the Defenders' advantage in the form of more production will pay off here, and Keiras holds the line for now.
Yeah, I gotta be careful about that overextending potential. There's the split on the escape, as you've astutely pointed out, Winter, and he does have a Shroudstone at home. So few less units. Okay, take the defensive stance. Not necessarily a huge deal. He can move back out and take the vision camp one more time. And we get our, I guess this is our second series now that we've had go to the third game. So I think it's always an interesting kind of conversation that comes up about the way that players prepare against each other. I love that you brought up like the best of one nature of the ladder. Like nobody's ever gone to play a big tournament and just not known a single thing at all about their opponents, right? You have usually some level to prepare, or you can make an adjustment in between games. So now that we're getting to see more of a tournament type of environment, and especially the series go a little longer, it's kind of fun to see that level of respect that builds up for what you think you can get away with, what you can't. And the fact that, for example, Keiras, he's not building the shroud, he's not rushing the shroud stone. He doesn't feel like he needs it for whatever reason. And Blask, he was, it's not something that he's like, okay, I probably can skip this even though I threw some units. So he's like, no, okay, I'm gonna dial it back a little bit and not risk it here.
Well, speaking of risking it, Keiras he cuts through with the imp, and just as the Doombringer comes out, he uses the speed camp. It doesn't matter who's there, but instead, the speed is definitely helping out. He's going to be able to close the distance immediately. Looks like that's a super stone, though. Going to work his way through the gaunts. Good targeting, or, well, they just got too close. And this attempted backstab attack, not incredibly successful, but the imps are not mining at the natural base there, and I know Keiras has plenty of workers back at home. So as long as he doesn't lose a fight decisively, I think this is still a win for him.
Yeah, it's an awkward way that plays out. That he's right as he's trying to take the Doombringer out. That's right at the moment that the attack shows up. And normally you can at least say, well, the Doombringer gives you the shroud, but it's next to your base, so you already have shroud. Not really
And
much of a
so
factor.
does he as well.
Yeah, that too goes both ways. So kind of just jockeying around the Ethereum deposit outside of his base. Not really much going on there though, and a whole lot of production, I'm assuming, getting slammed down inside of Keiras' base back home, getting himself set up and ready for the next phase of this one while he takes his third.
Yeah, I don't know how much we've seen. There is an upgrade for the gaunts that allows them to trade HP for movement speed. I wonder where we've seen that before, but that is a later game tech. I don't see too many people use it because usually you don't want the gaunts chasing things on their own. Oh my god.
Is he gonna get it? Yeah.
That. Yeah.
Brutal. Absolutely brutal shutdown on the third then for
so squishy.
for Keiras. It feels weird because you're like, some of the units take so long to die, and then when you get a couple of units on a building that's under construction, you're like, well, these actually are not quite that armored, huh? So
the Fiends have a lot of DPS. They take things out very quickly. I think they might actually do more outright damage than a gaunt, just single target. But of course, they have to close the distance. They don't have much HP, but you cannot underestimate their damage output, especially when they're just on their own doing the damage themselves. 2 base versus 2 base is where we end up. But taking the shrine to the north is Blask. That little hidden shrine, which of course once Magmadons are on the field becomes a lot less hidden. But neither player able to get a distinct economic advantage. So that means we're going to move into the magma phase. And it's unclear who has the advantage.
That's gonna get wild. Actually the Doombringer goes into the cone of that vision tower right as he takes it. So Keiras has the awareness of where the Doombringer is, and since we know it's a bit of it's not like necessarily all or nothing, but you're not doing piecemeal pick up and drop type play. So whether you're gonna commit with that or not is definitely something that is always going to be a decision that has to be made one way or the other. Blask does have that third that you mentioned in the hidden forest, and he's kind of set up a staging ground at one of the more obvious direct paths forward. There's still, of course, that south side that he could end up getting attacked from where the Ethereum is, but not feeling as concerned about that. And I guess for Keiras, maybe he just doesn't feel like he can go out on the map because of the Doombringer. He's just waiting for him to at least show his hand and try to use it. And there it is, over in the natural, getting a couple of the imps immediately. Targets 1 or 2 down, gets a few fiends, lifts up, and actually the fiend ends up taking one of the slots. So there is a gaunt that's left behind.
Well, at the end of the day, not too much damage, but yeah, keeping him bottled up there, as you mentioned. And it's more scouting than it is really attempting to get critical damage done to the economy. You force them to show their hand somewhat when you drop that many units out. And it feels like Blask has kind of taken a lot of the map and taken control of the situation as Keiras has backed off and given it to him. Getting the speed camp I'm surprised we haven't seen any Magmadons yet, but I think that should be the defining character. Oh, well, something took down. I can see on the mini-map there's a significant lack of trees near the center, so I believe we have some Magmadons on the field.
That guy looks opened up. Looks opened up a little bit for taking that center base, and that is the cash money base of this map. So there you go. There's your Magmadons and a couple of fiends running around the north side, maybe trying to see if there's anything that they can get their paws on. As the expansion was taken again by Keiras, so that's the one. It's closer to your main base, but you have this really wide angle that it's exposed by, right? So if you take the hidden one, then as you pointed out, without the Magmadon, there's not too much pressure you can put on, but also he, up until this moment where he was aware of it, he was never going to accidentally run into it either. So you kind of have to deliberately check that spot. And he's going to open it up on his side.
We're opening up the arena. All right. The center of the map
Coliseum
will probably be the point we end up clashing if both these players have their way. Ideally, one of them is able to get the jump on the other. But it's clear neither player. It's that game 3 aspect where you don't want to be the first one to take the bad fight, right? And that's what it really feels like. They're both just sitting back, and I don't know if I've ever seen anyone max out at the 300 supply we can go up to, but this might be the closest we see today.
We're about to find out. We're about to find out, I think, is the case here, Winter. As there's just a lot of Gaunts, a lot of Magmadons coming in here too. Still like having the Doombringer as the option. Now that I've seen the bunker micro in and out of it on the ground, I'm a little bit more of a believer that just having that with your force, whether it's for the Shroud or just somewhere to tuck a unit in for a second that's getting target fired, is very nice. He's continuing to clear out the trees around the center position with the Magmadons, and that's probably one of my favorite aspects of this game, and things that especially kind of rings true from the Age of Empires stuff we were talking about earlier. But just being able to have such a huge effect on what the layout of the map is over time, that you can kind of create these spaces to have these engagements if you want. It's just awesome to see.
And here we go. Both sides lining up. It's going to be Blask, who already has the Shroud Stone here. Not a big difference. And he's actually bashed his way through. Throws out the Infest. We've got the tramples on both sides. Stop it around. If the Hellborns are able to target the backline Gaunts, that could make all the difference. The Magmadons having it out in the front, and both sides forced to retreat as the Magmadons essentially boxing out the ranged units on each army.
The Gaunts retreated so deep into a huge concave in the inside of the center base. So you're talking about whether he was going to be able to keep the Hellborn safe in the back. Some of the Fiends did try to go for a little bit of a flank on this spot, but as the Magmadon count reduces, the Gaunts are going to go for the chase. They can't run away too easily, but there's a lot of firepower still with this. Another Magmadon is going to come out of the back for Keiras, going for his big infest all over the Gaunts of his opponent and looking for that opportunity. Just 1 or 2 big shots to try and snowball, but it doesn't look like it's going to show itself. Just 1 or 2 more Hellborns trying to throw this back as the Magmadon stomps through. But there is not a lot else here for Keiras. Reinforcements come in for Blask. There's another huge wave of Gaunts, and again, it's all about the Magmadon, as you pointed out, just trying to hold it down.
Yeah, the Magmadon count for Blask is clearly higher here, and now he's able to take the center of the map. He still only has 3 bases to fall back on. It's not, it's bad, obviously here. But it's not necessarily game-ending if he's still able to find a big fight. But once you have this sort of magma lead, obviously you have map control. You can take that center of the map, and with it, the double Luminite and Therium mines. So I think Keiras is going to have 1 shot, possibly 1 opportunity. And if he's able to capture it, that might be enough. But otherwise, Blask should be able to carry this through to a potential victory.
Well, perhaps may he pray that he doesn't let it slip. As you mentioned, he's taking a huge map control. The center base now under construction for him as well. As he continues to steamroll his way forward, it's just going to be it's a tough force to stop now. He's just got so much left over, and fighting defensively, being on the defensive side in any fight against Infernals always feels a little extra painful, just because of those hogs, those imps that get turned into the extra fiends, and really makes it feel like when you go from barely losing a fight to losing it real badly. Just can be absolutely brutal, but he is going to show a little bit of respect and step off for a second. Dragon comes in from the outside, so goes for the infest breath, and of course it has that later ability to try to breathe it back in and damage everything infested. So looking for a huge turnaround play off of effectively the tier 3 here for the Infernal. Gets most of the white health removed, steps back, going to continue to try and just play with the range against this. And Keiras is actually chunking out a huge portion of this army, Winter.
Yeah, the Magmadons, the highest single target damage in the for the Infernals is the Dragon here. And he's targeting down the Magmadons, and the extra fiends he gets from the Dragon Aura, where the Infest does essentially double duty, and he gets 2 fiends per infested unit, has allowed him, well, this is that one shot, all right? The Dragon comes in like a plot device in order to turn the entire game.
The door opened just the tiniest fraction of a millimeter, and Keiras stuck his foot in there real quick. He is going for it all right now. This center base is crucial economically speaking. More breath coming out from the Dragon, though, as he continues to fall back. And you talk about the mirror, he's getting the white health restored on his opponent's shroud, too. So things to keep in mind is just it becomes the really powerful anchor for the Force. But again, that 4th base for Blask, he can't just walk away and let him have this and be behind. It's not going to go well for him. It's not a single base. It's got all the economic provisions of 2 full expansions. Can't just let that go. Now we have the Dragon on the other side. We're Game of Thrones now, boys.
All right, some dragon. Technically, you can have multiple dragons, though it is a 5-minute cooldown.
I've heard that is against the law, though, so you gotta be careful. Be a little careful.
Well, dragons can rewrite the law.
They get a little less cool when you have more of them, all right? We all know that. It's like ninjas, okay? All right, it's just the way it goes. One dragon, badass. 10, not so much.
They do so much damage. Pretty much nothing can touch the dragon except for the other dragons at this stage of the game. The ground army is pounding through as the dragon wars continue. And Blask doesn't really have enough left over. He's got 1 Magmadon. Couple more coming up. They keep piloting both sides. The Dragon trying to target the other Dragon. The Dragon on Dragon action. I need to stop saying the word Dragon, but I just can't stop.
Yeah, at this point, you could say he's just dragging his army across the map trying to finish this one, but those Dragons are definitely getting in the way, Winter. Just continuing. So many fiends now with the army. That buff on the Infest is fascinating to watch come to fruition. Keiras was in a really tough spot. It looked like he was maybe going to be taken out, but he's managed to turn a few units into quite a bit. But of course, that other Dragon, the further in that he goes, that shoot turns quickly again. But now he's coming in. His Dragon's fighting from the outside. His Blast. The whole army is just completely scattered all across the place. The Magmadons are getting surrounded, chewed down by the fiends. Dragon for Blask is dead, however. So for Blask, this is the big reestablishment opportunity. Keiras did take a 4th base while this was happening. Superstone goes up, it comes down, and oh my gosh, we've got an absolute brutal bloodbath. Still have Magmadon stomping into the natural of Blask does Keiras. He is pushing as hard as he possibly can for a resolution here, but it's still going to be so tough to deal with the Dragon.
He just keeps bringing that health back up with the breath wave ability, and the Gaunts just don't have the damage. He was so close with the Superstone. I don't even see any HP on the Dragon there. It's within 1 bar, which I think 1 more shot would have done it, but he's now pushing through into the production. There's just not enough for Keiras has turned it all the way around and across the entire map, and probably the most dramatic and drawn-out fight we've seen today, and it was Infernal versus Infernal. I guess tier 3 units are pretty interesting, Nathanias.
Yeah. Turn the tide in such a way, and for a game 3 mirror matchup, I don't think it gets too much more exciting than that for this stage of the game. That was awesome. We really got to see a bit of everything come out on the Infernal side this time. We had that discussion about Vanguard earlier, but you could really see it. It's so expensive to get that too. It's like, was it 500 of each resource or something ridiculous? Tons of energy from the top bar. So to get that unit represents like a monumental investment across the entire course of the game, because I don't even think there's any feasible functional way that you could try to rush it out. It's something you only get in this kind of situation, and it's awesome to see it get used like that.